Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Canal Algérie's nightly news. On to the headlines. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, chairs a high-level meeting for the finalization of an executive decree aimed at supporting small-scale importers. And we continue with military school's graduation ceremonies, this time from the Higher School of Aviation Technology at Dar al Bayda. In the Middle East, international reactions urge de-escalation and return to diplomatic dialogue. And Algeria reiterates its steadfast call for a peaceful political resolution to the crisis following the Zionist aggression on Iran. At least 37 Gazans martyred in a deadly Zionist attack targeting humanitarian aid distribution points in Gaza Strip. Welcome back. We kick off with tonight's top story, where the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, presided on Sunday a working meeting to finalize an executive decree on small businesses, which will be issued by the end of the current month. The meeting was held in the presence of the Principal Private Secretary to the Presidency of the Republic, Boualem Boualem, the Secretary General of the Presidency of the Republic, Abdullah Munji, the Minister of Interior, Local Collectivities and Territory Planning, Brahim Mered, the Minister of Finance, Abdelkarim Bouzerd, the Minister of Foreign Trade and Promotion of Export, Kemal Rizig, the Minister of Domestic Trade and National Market Regulation, Tayyib Zitouni, the Minister of Knowledge Economy, Startups and Microenterprises, Nouruddin Odah, the General Director of National Security, Ali Badawi, and the General Director of Customs, Abdelhafid Bakhush. In other news, an official delegation visited the hospitals of Bab el-Wed, Ben Aknoun and Bni Masous to inquire about the state of the wounded following the 5th of July stadium and means to take care of them. It included the Minister of Youth and the advisor to the President of the Republic in charge of the General Directorate of Communication, Kemal Sidi Said, the General Secretaries of the Ministries of Sport and Interior, as well as the Governor or Wali of Algiers. Here's what the Minister of Health had to say.
مصالح الصحة البارحة تأهبت لاستقبال الجرحى.
Health services treated 74 injured people yesterday. By this morning, only 7 were still in hospital. 2 at Bab el-Wed, 3 at Bni Masous, 1 at Ben Aknoun and 1 at Mustafa Pasha hospitals. We were on high alert after the incident at the end of the match. All resources were mobilized and the emergency plan was launched. Hospitals were fully prepared to care for the injured. The Ministry of Health worked with Security and Social Services to make sure the injured received proper care. After treatment, they were safely taken home.
طبعا بعد ما تم تلقي العلاج.
In a solemn atmosphere, the funeral of the 3 victims of the 5th of July stadium accident, all which were supporters of MCA, was held on Sunday after the Asr prayer. The funeral was attended by several ministers of several sectors, in addition to families, friends of the victims and supporters of Mouloudia, and a crowd of citizens at the Wad Rumman, Hay al-Jabal Cemetery and Al-Aliya Cemetery in Algiers. In related news, and as instructed by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, an investigation committee was established to investigate the circumstances of the tragic accident, following which 4 people have now passed away, the failings and the responsibilities, and to prosecute those involved. The Commission will submit its report as soon as possible with a view to taking the necessary legal measures to prevent similar tragic accidents from happening again. This Commission is composed of representatives of the Ministers of Interior, Justice, Housing and Sports, as well as the relevant departments under the National Gendarmerie Command. In other news, the commander of the Air Force, Major General Zubair Ghouila, supervised this Sunday at the Higher School of Technical Aeronautics Shahid Musa Rahali in Dar al Bayda, the graduation ceremony of the 31st batch of active officers who received the qualitative and ballast training in line with the latest pedagogical approaches adopted in various military and scientific knowledge sectors. Najah Tayyar with the full story.
أقسم بالله العلي العظيم أن أكون الخادم الوفي لبلدي والمخلد خالد شهداء الأمجاد.
نطلب من سيادتكم الموافقة على تسليم دفعتنا باسم مجاهد بشار
At the higher school of the Technical Aeronautic Shahid Musa Rahali, the 31st graduating class of active officer cadets completed their training. This cohort received advanced scientific and practical instruction aligned with the latest developments in modern aviation technology, equipping them with the skills to confidently meet the challenges of the aviation field. The graduation ceremony began with the inspection of the ranks overseen by the Air Force Commander Major General Zubair Ghouila. The scene reflected the high level of military discipline and professionalism that characterized the training journey. The school's commander addressed the graduates, highlighting the significance of their transition into the practical and operational world. He emphasized that they would serve as the true evaluators of the training institution, as their future performance in the field, with all its challenges and requirements, would reflect the effectiveness of the education they had received. He expressed hope that the results they would achieve would become a key source of motivation for the school to continue improving and to further contribute to the overall objectives of the military training system. Afterwards, the graduates proudly and solemnly took the military oath. The ceremony continued with the awarding of diplomas and the presentation of ranks to the top performing students. And to uphold traditions of loyalty and continuity, the graduating class handed over the flag to the incoming class.
هذا علمنا نضعه أمانة في أعناقكم فاحفظوا الأمانة وصونوا الوديعة.
The class was named in honor of the late Mujahid Rabah Shalah, in tribute to his legacy of struggle and to uphold the values of sacrifice and dedication. The graduating class then presented a military parade, showcasing their high readiness and professional discipline. The ceremony also featured a display of final year projects, during which the students presented their innovations and scientific achievements. In a gesture of loyalty and gratitude, the family of the late Mujahid Rabah Shalah was honored in recognition of his lasting sacrifices for the nation. The ceremony concluded with the signing of the school's Golden Book.
أقسم بالله العلي العظيم أن أكون الخادم الوفي لبلدي وأن أخلد تقاليد شهداء الأمجاد.
نطلب من سيادتكم الموافقة على تسليم دفعتنا باسم مجاهد بشار
In cooperation, the Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi received on Sunday the Minister of Social Development of the Sultanate of Oman, Layla bin Ahmed bin Awad al-Najjar. The discussions were an occasion to commend the ties of fraternity, friendship and cooperation binding the two brotherly countries, witnessing an exceptional dynamic. The Minister of Social Development of the Sultanate of Oman, Layla bin Ahmed bin Awad al-Najjar, was also received by the Minister of National Solidarity, Family Issues and Women, Soraya Muluji. As for the Minister of Trade, Industry and Promotion of Export, Kamal Razik, he received the Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment Promotion of the Sultanate of Oman, Qais Mohammed Al Yusuf, who is on a visit to Algeria, heading a high-level delegation. The Omani minister was also received by the Minister of Domestic Trade and Market Regulation, Tayyib Zitouni, and the head of the National Agency for Promotion of Investment, Omar Rakesh. The meeting was an opportunity to explore prospects of investment and cooperation, especially that the Sultanate of Oman will be the guest of honor of the 56th edition of Algiers International Fair. On to the international window of the night. On the sidelines of the 51st session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, held talks in Istanbul with several of his counterparts, which allowed for an examination of developments in the Middle East, roundup of the minister's intense diplomatic activity with Rania al-Bahri.
Minister of State and Minister of Foreign Affairs Ahmed Attaf met with his Jordanian counterpart to discuss the dangerous developments in the region, including the ongoing aggression against Iran. Attaf also held talks with his Malaysian counterpart, where various aspects of the bilateral relationship were reviewed, with the prospects of Algeria's anticipated accession to the Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. In another meeting with his Egyptian counterpart, the need to continue coordination was emphasized to advance international efforts to reach a peaceful settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. Algerian-Mauritanian relations were a focus of discussions between Minister Attaf and his Mauritanian counterpart. In his meeting with his Azerbaijani counterpart, the two sides reviewed the current situation in the region and neighborhood of the Republic of Azerbaijan. On the sidelines of the works, Ahmed Attaf met with his Iranian counterpart, where Attaf expressed Algeria's position and its emphasis on devoting the political and peaceful approach to spare the region further tension and tragedies. Attaf also addressed in his meeting with his Yemeni and Pakistani counterparts the same concerns. Ahmed Attaf also met with his Syrian counterpart, and the meeting was an opportunity to review the current situation in the Middle East region and all the threats and dangers it poses. At the end of the participation, Attaf held talks with his counterpart in the Republic of Bangladesh on the prospects and development of bilateral relations.
On to this communique by the MFA on Sunday, and I quote, "At a time of international consensus on ways to reduce tensions in the region, the Israeli aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran last night witnessed extremely dangerous developments that further escalated the situation through the U.S. bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities. Whereas paradoxical is that the international consensus has emphasized and continues to emphasize the need for a ceasefire, a return to the negotiation table, and a sincere and good faith pursuit of a peaceful solution to the Iranian nuclear issues. Algeria expresses its deep concern and profound regret over this escalation, which aggravates the situation in the region and exposes it to unprecedented risks with unforeseen consequences. The sensitivity and gravity of the situation compel all parties to heed the lessons of the region's history, which proves beyond doubt that military means have never resolved any of the problems affecting it. Therefore, the top priority now is to return to the safest, most effective, and least costly approach, a peaceful political approach based on the provisions and rules of international legitimacy and the United Nations Charter, which would spare the region further tensions and tragedies." End quote. Indeed, the tension in the Middle East has reached a boiling point on the 10th day of clashes between Iran and the Zionist entity, especially after the U.S. strikes hit Iran's nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, pushing Tehran to call for an urgent UN Security Council meeting. Latest developments with Najah Tayyar.
The military escalation between Iran and the Zionist entity has reached alarming levels, with no signs of de-escalation 10 days after the initial attack. This Sunday's morning, Iran responded forcefully, firing 40 missiles into areas deep within the territories occupied by the Zionist entity, resulting in extensive material damage. And the Zionist forces in turn targeted several strategic sites and residential areas in Iran in attacks of rare intensity. Tensions reached a new level with the direct involvement of the United States. Overnight, airstrikes hit 3 Iranian nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. In light of the growing escalation, the Iranian authorities have turned to the United Nations Security Council, calling for an urgent session to address the situation. In a formal statement, Tehran denounced the actions as a clear breach of international law and emphasized its right to retaliation. Meanwhile, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency has announced that an emergency meeting will be held on Monday at the agency's headquarters in Vienna. Amid the mounting tensions, fears of a wider regional conflict have grown, prompting many airlines to reroute flights and steer clear of the Middle Eastern airspace. The escalation has already caused major disruptions to the international air travel, raising concerns over the broader impact on the global stability.
With deep concern and dismay, the National Independent Authority for Audiovisual Regulation has followed the rise of misleading media discourse, often laced with suspicious alarmist overtones, particularly through a number of websites where false information and misleading content have been promoted, addressing regional and international contexts, implicating Algeria in an unfounded analysis and baseless speculations. Therefore, the authority strongly condemns this type of fabricated and malicious alarmism and warns against being swayed by this biased content, which threatens public peace and undermines national public opinion, and calls on all institutions to demonstrate responsibility, high vigilance, and a commitment to objectivity and professionalism, as well as to ensure the selection of political analysts known for their competence and objectivity. Zionist forces intensify attacks on Gaza. On Sunday, at least 37 Palestinians have been killed, 8 of which were seeking aid in the south under blockade for more than 4 months. The Zionist occupiers using famine as an arm and distribution of aid as a trap, assassinating civilians regularly in aid distribution zones. With that, we end tonight's news. Thank you for joining us. Good night.